Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is the Daily Dose mental health tips for you, for your family, for your kids. This week we're focusing on children, all things kids. And so today's lesson's actually on bullying and how to respond to a bully. So this is a really great lesson. As something I actually learned from another psychologist and police officer friend and a few other influences, and I find that it's just a wonderful lesson for applying to difficult situations where you've got just opposing forces. So before we get started, though, I want to tell you, please go online, share this video if you know anyone who is struggling with this, or maybe their kid's been dealing with bullying, or maybe they just really need some confidence in how to deal with difficult situations. So please keep that in mind. Please tag that person or share this video with them. I know it would be helpful for them. So let's get started. Bullying is such a big part of today's society, and I think that it always has been a part of our society. I think that maybe we had some, I don't know, some more moral influences in the past. Maybe there's just new forms for bullying, like social media and texting and the interwebs. And so children have more access to spreading bullying. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for kids to, maybe kids that wouldn't normally engage in bullying, but because of peer pressure, because of the social platform, it's easier for them to get kind of pulled into that. And then also, there's a lot of TV and song music influences. And so, sometimes parents can be an influence as well. So really stop and think about what are the influences that are going on in your child's life. And is your child easily susceptible to being, susceptible to peer pressure? All right. What is their social media reach? What influences, what access do they have to people either bullying them or them engaging in bullying behavior towards others? So that's really important to really take a minute and to stop and reflect on that, okay? And now, just because this is one of the great disclaimers that I believe children don't belong to us. They are on loan for us. They have their own journey. They're meant to learn their own personalities, learn their own brains, learn how to adult through life themselves. They really have to walk their own journey. And what that means is, though we model and influence a lot of their behaviors and perspectives on the world, we are not responsible for all of their choices. They are. They are fully autonomous individuals, and they are responsible for their choices. Now, we hold responsibility to raise them. And so it's important that we're modeling good behavior, that we're setting up opportunities for them to learn and grow, and that we're really helping them develop empathy and compassion and, good moral fibers, good moral concepts. But just because your child has engaged in, bullying or peer pressuring or a negative behavior doesn't mean that you are failing. And just because your child has been bullied or experienced that peer pressure doesn't mean you're failing either. It just means that perhaps there's an opportunity to really work and grow with your child. Okay? So let's keep that in mind. All right. The concept of dealing with difficult, sometimes scary, sometimes fearful situations, and where that the things could escalate. The concept of dealing with them, for me, and for what I like to encourage, is dealing with them with the least force necessary. Let me explain. So we have boys in our house. We have 3 sons. And so that means that we want to raise them to be compassionate, soft-hearted, tender, caring, empathetic children, but we don't want to raise them to be weak, right? So there's kind of this sometimes balance between what's compassion and what's being a pushover, what's having empathy and what's pity. And really learning how to distinguish, being a gentleman or being weak, and learning what the difference looks like, how to have strength and courage of heart and integrity and all those masculine qualities, and also have the discernment of how not to use them and how to use them, right? These are really big concepts. And if you watched my video on child brain development, the idea of really big concepts doesn't develop until much later in life. So if you're sending your child to school and they're very young, sometimes it can get confusing. So we have to talk about, when do we use our strength? When do we stand our ground? When do we stand up for ourselves? And when do we tell the teacher? And that was a really awkward conversation for me with my 10-year-old, especially a couple of years ago when he still couldn't access all of those cognitive thinking skills, especially when he felt insulted, hurt, or scared. Remember, we talked about the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. And if you're pushed or laughed at or mocked in school, you are all in your downstairs brain. And it's really hard to stop and think cognitively with your upstairs brain about how you should best respond to this. It's intimidating. And you can get all caught in your feelings and your fears. And when you add to that a parent telling a child, well, what you should do is the next time that person says to you, you should do this, and you should stand up for yourself, and don't ever let, those are really big adult ideas. And you've got all this pressure on this little kid. My oldest was having trouble around 7. Really at 7, like he could get insulted and he could get his feelings really wounded. And his response to wounded feelings was not a good response. It was usually, he would go from very wounded to, I'm going to hurt this kid. And that's not a good extreme for a child to move from, I'm sad and wounded and quiet and withdrawn, to, I'm going to hurt this kid. There's all these other layers in between. And getting my child to stop and move through those layers gradually required what we developed as a least force necessary list. All right, so cops use this list, least force necessary. And it comes from the idea that if you're a cop and you show up into a bad situation, just by being there in uniform, that's a measure of force. Okay, that's a measure of force. That's you, enforcing your presence in the situation. So for a kid, standing up straight and tall is a force. So when they're being bullied or they're being, wounded, having a stance is the first step of that least force necessary, right? Other, on a COPS list, other least force necessary force things that they do is like having verbal commands. All right. And then there's certain gestures, and then they move down the list to physical violence, right? But that's always like the last, right? They're going to go through all these other things before they get to the last, which is the violence part, right? The responding with physical harm. It's always the last thing on the list. And for me, that was a very important lesson to teach my son when responding to bullies, that you need to have this kind of plan that's not going to take you from 0 to 60 in 3.25 seconds, that you're going to go through an appropriate chain of responses and regulate yourself so you never lose control of your emotions. Because remember, what that does in the brain is that keeps them in their downstairs brain. So having the conversations where we say, okay, kids, this situation happened. Let's come up with some appropriate responses that you think you could do. All right? Not what I'm going to tell you how to do, but that you think you could actually do. What do you think you could do if a child does this or that or the other? Okay? So I think that this is a wonderful conversation, even for girls. If you have a daughter and she's experiencing peer pressure or bullying, it's an excellent conversation to go ahead and sit down and come up with a plan of what would be appropriate measures that she could take at different points in order to manage this situation. All right. And allow her to be autonomous in this, or your son. Allow them to really express themselves in these ideas. All right. Yes, you can tell the teacher. And then what else? What are other things that you can do to really engage and to be engaged as kind of a confident person in this scenario? All right. You can give a verbal command. Stop doing this. This is bullying. Um, I don't appreciate this. This shows little integrity. Um, you can, remove yourself from the situation. You can unfriend. You can block. There's other great ideas, but sit down with your child and come up with a kind of a plan for them of how they want to respond and what they think would be good. All right. Then I would practice these things. All right. We use a lot of conversation over dinners or riding in the car where we have conversations and we get our kids to think these things through and kind of walk them through. Okay, if you said this and then so and so said that, now what do you think is going to happen next? And how would you handle that? And what could you do? All right. I don't really advocate for kids to agree with bullies. If somebody's saying, "Oh, you're stupid," or "you're bad," or "you're this," and they're saying that, going, "Yeah, I know," those passive aggressive behaviors don't really model confidence. So make sure that whatever responses you have come up with your child are assertive responses. Okay. The other thing that I like to really challenge my kids to do is to stop and look past the bad behavior of the bully and think about what things they are lacking in their life. Because hurt people hurt people. So really stop and look, okay, this bully is saying this. What are they really after? They want me to be afraid? Well, I'm not really afraid. They want me to be unpopular? But why? Why would they want me to be unpopular? What does it have to do with them? Okay? Because people's bad behavior says more about them than it ever does about us. So really getting our kids to notice that other people's bad behavior, other people's bullying behavior is about them. It tells their story. It has nothing to do with us. Okay? It's not even really our business. It's their bad behavior, and it reflects who they are on the inside. And really having your child learn that and learn to recognize that will keep them from engaging and negatively contracting in passive aggressive ways. Teach them to be assertive, to have a response prepared, and to never just roll over and be passive and, oh, well. No, we deal with bullies by being direct and assertive. No, that's wrong. I'm sorry you feel this way. You must be going through something that would really cause you to behave this way. I really wish that you could see that you didn't have to be like a bully. You didn't have to be so negative. But since that's where you're at, that's fine. I'm going to remove myself from the situation. I'm going to tell an adult. I'm going to deal with you directly. And then if it escalates to a point of violence, then I'm going to make sure I'm physically safe and prepared to stand my ground. We believe in martial arts. We've enrolled our kids in jujitsu. I think jujitsu is a wonderful way for children, especially boys, to learn how to control their physical aggression and still feel confident and secure that they could subdue and submit someone who is being angry or violent. So those are some of the decisions we've made with our boys. And I strongly encourage parents to look into different martial art forms or different ways of physically engaging in a peaceful or a way of reaching a peaceful outcome in the end. All right. So the final thing I want to leave you with is having your child create an opportunity for repairing a relationship. Many times bullying happens between what would have been two friends. Okay, especially within your girl populations. At one point they were friends and then they had a falling out. And so now there's bullying and now there's negative banter. Or maybe there's two boys who are kind of competitive with each other, and that competition is turning to a toxic level. Okay, and so getting your kids to realize that sometimes children just, especially while they're younger, just really want to be friends, and that competitiveness or maybe some of their expectations are getting in the way of a friendship. Okay, so really help your child to learn how to leave open a door for forgiveness and repairing a relationship or restoring a relationship. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about your really horrible, awful bully who has really done horrible things. Okay. Because there are those. All right. This is for kids who used to be friends and now there's all this toxic behavior between the two of them. Okay. So, really allowing yourself to sit down with your kid and kind of understand what's going on behind these layers. All right. Is there passive aggressive behaviors within your child that's really building this? Or is there a competitiveness that we can begin kind of dissecting and working on a plan to allow a forgiveness to occur? All right. Teaching your child how to forgive someone, how to let go of the personal pain and realize that bad behavior is reflective of the other person. Okay. How to pray for someone who's being, aggressive towards you, and how to communicate and stand strong in your communication towards proper authority. Those are all really important concepts, and really being able to walk with your kids through this is an amazing opportunity. The reality is bullies don't stop on the playground, okay? Especially in today's society. There's a lot of bullying that goes on even into adulthood, even into the workforce, even into, high school, college, mom shaming, toxic femininity, toxic masculinity. People grow up and they perpetuate these bad behaviors throughout life. Okay, so teaching your child while they're young how to deal with toxic behaviors and difficult people and negative competitiveness. Some competitiveness is great, but sometimes it turns passive aggressive and it turns into these toxic bullying behaviors. So teaching your child how to deal with that, how to respond to that, and to come up with a plan. I hope this video helps you, all right? If you have more specific scenarios, remember every scenario is different. That's why it takes you as a insightful, reflective parent who's caring and engaged to really sit down with your child and come up with that plan. All right, draw those boundaries, teach them how to respond, and get them to see past the situation. Really encourage them to grow their empathy on this. This is just an amazing opportunity for your child to learn and to carry them with them through the rest of their life. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this, please subscribe. Please share this with someone. You can also reach me on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I hope you have a wonderful evening and good mental health.